welcome everybody to this virtual glass of wine. Thank you very much for joining me and the lovely Ruth Antoine, who was the winner of our first ever Cut Above Awards, Michael Johns BFE Assistant Editor Award, sponsored by Salon Post Production Services. Congratulations, Ruth. How does that feel?
Great, thank you so much. It's nice that assistant editors are having that recognition. It's really, honestly, I'm so happy that there's an award like that for us.
Does it change anything?
We get forgotten sometimes.
Have you put all your rates up now and started telling people I'm not getting out of bed at a certain time because I'm an award winner?
Oh yeah, no one calls me before noon. They're like, oh yeah, that award winner, she sleeps in till noon.
Perfect. Right, well, I have had the pleasure of being interviewed by Ruth before, so I'm really, really, really happy to turn the tables. And because all the time for our interview, I thought, wow, but there's so much I want to know about you. And so it's really nice to get a chance to ask you all those questions and hear all about you. So I'm going to start with a bit of background for, I don't know much about you except the bits I do. So obviously I nominated you for the award. So I'm really, really pleased that I was right. And I thought you deserved it for everything. I've not worked with Ruth before, but I know her through the Black British Post-Production Collective. And everything that I've heard about her and spoken to her about was just so amazing. And obviously her work reputation, whenever I recommended her to someone, people were like, oh yeah, we know her, she's great. So got all of that right. But I want to start with a little bit of background about you. So I'm going to lay it out from the start that obviously you and I don't look like sort of the expected faces of post-production. So in the UK at least. So tell me a little bit about your beginnings and how you came to the film industry.
Yeah, thank you. What a great introduction. Thanks very much. Where do I start? Okay, I can start from the beginning. Yeah, like you just said, I'm not a typical face that would even think or dream about working in the film industry. So my parents both from the West Indies. My mom's Jamaican, my dad's Guyanese. I grew up in the Peckham Estate, council estate, and yeah, not a bit of a rough neighborhood, you know. But I used to watch old westerns with my dad. We had a black and white television, and I was absolutely fascinated. That's my earliest memory of loving film. I must have been, 5 or 6, watching old westerns with my dad. And although, I wasn't in the greatest area, I did go to a really great primary school, and the head was a true believer. The ethos of the school is you could do whatever you want to do. And honestly, it really is quite true, because Rio Ferdinand, Anton Ferdinand, and both Ferdinands went to my primary school, and we were literally the head was amazing, and she really encouraged us to do whatever we want to do. And I knew from an early age I was quite creative, but not necessarily knew I wanted to work in film. After primary school, went on to secondary school, and perhaps, I went to a school that wasn't, I would say, nurturing. Didn't really push creativity as such, and didn't have the best experience with certain teachers. And actually, by the time I got into the A levels, thinking about my choices of what I want to do after school, the teachers were like, Ruth's not a product. She's not a product. She's not someone that should go to uni. And coming from working class, sort of humble beginnings, and my mom was a nurse, worked as a nurse for 47 years, can I just say? She was like, no, my daughter's going to uni, what are you talking about? And she persuaded the school to enter my UCAS application to uni. So I kind of went from having a really, really positive upbringing, but primary, to then not having great secondary and feeling like I don't know what I want to do. I didn't get much encouragement. The only people who were really encouraging me were friends and family. So as a result, I ended up choosing a generic degree, media studies, because I knew I wanted to be creative. I just didn't know what, but I thought that was probably a good starting point. And then went to a positive, I've met really great tutors at London South Bank University, where I studied media studies. And the film tutor there really took a shine to me. One of the modules was to write a feature film. And he was like, that, you've got something there, that's a spark. And he really nurtured me. He used his contacts, and I managed to get work experience on T4 at the age of 18. That was my first real moment in the industry. It was television. And then I quickly found out I don't think I want to be on set. And I don't think it's TV. I want to work in film.
So you were quite specific quite early on that film was for you, not
yeah, television. I don't know I'm not sure when the moment kind of happened, but I do remember being a child and watching honestly old westerns with my dad, and I was not a Disney kid, so I didn't have that sort of that fantasy of all the glamour of filmmaking, like watching those great Disney. I didn't really watch all that. I was watching old black and whites with my dad, Frank Sinatra, oh my goodness, like those, God, I don't remember his name, but like the silent movies, and really film noir kind of. It was really weird. My dad had a really unusual taste of film. Yeah. And and I suppose just being exposed to that early on. And I remember my dad had this actual film camera, stills camera, and I used to play with that as a kid. I don't know, maybe that's where it all kind of started. But I'm a true, I guess when people say you're a product of your environment, perhaps that's partly it. Having that early on, and then going to a really positive primary school, although it was in quite a deprived area like Peckham, and then having the support of and particular role models who were like, no, you could do whatever you want, like reach that ceiling, try and succeed. Anyway, I graduated uni, had a little bit of work experience that the tutor hooked me up with, and I couldn't find work. And it was because I just didn't know how to get in. And I spent a long time sort of looking at the end roller, trying to figure out what do people do. And I thought the only way in was to work for Channel 4, BBC, not knowing about the freelance world and having no idea. Then I stumbled across, it's now Screen Skills, but at the time I think it was called Skill Set. They were running a year-long traineeship for 10 Black young people in London to make 10 films, and you learn about filmmaking. So on the course, we learned about lighting, being a DOP, a UPM, a producer, then we had to edit the short films. And that I knew after graduating, if I wanted to get into, I discovered I wanted to get into film. I just didn't know I didn't know anything about the craft and the technical side. I just thought you switch on a camera and you go. And actually, that was such a great scheme.
You didn't have to pick one before you started. You could just go in and do a bit of everything.
It was a bit of everything. And I think it was like lottery funded. It was a pilot scheme. So they only rolled it for 1 year. And it's such a shame it stopped after that, because I thought it was really, really great. And it was a little college called Video College in, it was like near Notting Hill. Like a really just small charitable sort of organisation who was like, just come free. It was unpaid, but we weren't paid. It was just, a year to make short films. And the whole purpose of that was to encourage young Black people to go into film industry, which was, as you know, very underrepresented anyway. And I did. We made 10 short films. One of my films won an award.
It did.
And here is my little trophy, guys.
Of course, well done, congratulations.
And it was sponsored by Eon Productions, and I met Barbara Broccoli at the award show. So that was in 2011. And it was, I guess, having that sort of accolade, that moment of, oh, she's an award winner, she knows what she's doing. It opened the door, and I got to meet film people, but on high-end sort of productions. I remember going along to a networking event, and I met a woman who worked at Frame Store who said, hey, we hire runners. We would love to hire you as a runner. Part-time, I was 22 at this stage, 22, part-time, working as a part-time runner, and at the same time, Gravity was in pre-production at Framestore. Framestore were doing the previews on Gravity, and I met the editorial team, the lovely Mark Sanger, who went on to win an Oscar for Gravity, and I fell in love with the team. I really loved the environment. I really, I liked editorial. I thought this was for me, and I made the decision that editorial was for me, and they hired me as their editorial trainee, and that was my first job in like proper paid full-time job, editorial trainee in Gravity.
It sounds like you were able to really benefit from being, right place, right time, obviously with all the training that you've done and that sort of, a network around you. You met someone, you go somewhere, you meet people. Would you say that's quite a common thing for getting in, or from what you know of getting into the industry?
I think it's a bit about, it's a touch of luck, being in the right place at the right time, and I guess networking. I think it is really important, but it's not so much, you can go along to a networking event, but what kind of person are you at that networking event? Are you kind of annoying? Are you really shy? Are you able to, like, how well can you communicate in that environment? And I think I shone, like, I don't know, like, my personality, I would say I'm quite confident, I'm quite an animated person. And I think people kind of gravitated towards that. I didn't take myself too seriously. And, there were certain people, there are people in the industry who are like, I want to work with her, she seems really cool. I don't want to work with the usual faces. I kind of want to work with someone different. I want diversity. I want to get to know her. And it was those people who really, I have to spank them for it, because they obviously saw something in me and was like, we want to, why don't you come along? And, Framestore weren't even hiring at that time. And I remember being in this room at Pinewood Studios at this networking event and just being ballsy. And I walked up to her and we weren't even talking about Framestore. We were just having a chat. And she was like, you're really cool. What are you doing here? What's going on? And she was like, you know what? I could probably get you a part-time job at Framestore. And I couldn't believe it. And that was it. And
did you know, but at that point, you still hadn't quite honed in on what it was that you wanted to do?
No.
How did you carve out this path to assistant editing?
So when I got to Framestore and I heard Gravity was there, so, Gravity was, Framestore was divided into two buildings. There was like commercial side and the film side. And I was actually employed in the commercials side. But I knew I kind of wanted to work in film. So I would, and the buildings were in two different parts in Soho. Like, it was like within walking distance. But Knoll Street was commercials and the film building was in Wells Street. So I used to sneak out and run up cross Oxford Circus to Wells Street to nosy into the film bit. And I heard Alfonso Cuarón was, in pre-production on Gravity, and I thought, well, this has got to be, I don't know how I'm going to approach him and how to talk to him, but it's got to have to happen. I was determined. I was like, I don't know what it is exactly I want to do, but I want to work in film. But I know if I get into that department, through that door, will my path work? And swipe and open that door. And I remember being like, damn it, my card doesn't work because I'm a commercials runner. So then I was like, damn, how did I? And then just by luck, Gravity said they need runners. So they wanted two. And I got the position. I can't even remember what the interview process was, but again, luck. And I sung it, and I literally for nearly a year made Alfonso Cuarón green teas and got his lunches for a year before Gravity went into production. I kid you not. I was the girl making Alfonso green teas, and every time I would go in, shy and meek, giving him his little green tea, I would start talking to him about, what are you doing? How did you do that? And he was like, who's this crazy girl? But then he kind of warmed to me, and and then I saw he was spending a lot of time in the cutting rooms. And he actually said to me, if you want to learn about, because at that time I thought maybe directing, being an AD is what I want to do. He said, if you want to do that, you need to learn about storytelling. And in the cutting room is where you're really going to learn about storytelling. And then I said, well, I want to come to set. I said it one day. I was like, I want to come to set when you start production. And he was like, oh, all right, okay. but then they found a position, the production found a position for me in editorial, and I became the editorial trainee, and I kind of just got stuck in that role because but can I just say, because I kind of thought I wanted to be a director, I wanted to be a UPN, I wanted to be like someone who was sort of like a bit gobby on set. I knew that because of that.
No.
I was like, I want to run something. I didn't want to be a producer. I wanted to be like, I wanted to hold, like I wanted to command. I liked the idea of being on set and people listening to me. I guess it's a bit like egotistical. I don't know, but I was like, grew up being told you could be whoever you want to be. So I was like, I want to be on set. I want to command these men. I want to like some warrior princess. No,
why not? Go get them.
Yeah, I was like, go for it. I made it this far. I might as well like even reach further, because I was like, well, I got here. I got into Framestore. I got into a room with Alfonso Cuarón. Then I got to set.
You've made the most of every opportunity by the sounds of it, getting here. I mean, a year of making tea, I'm going to get better at my tea making skills. It's amazing.
Well, yeah, it was a lot of tears and a lot of frustration, I have to say. There was many moments where I felt as though I wanted to leave the industry, because you could imagine, you know, having graduated and telling your mom, I'm making teas. It's not great. And, you know, obviously, and then on top of that, just seeing my people around me, I was the only Black runner at Framestore at the time, and then feeling, and mostly male as well, middle class male. No one looked like me, no one sounded like me, and then feeling, I remember, I had quite a few days just feeling really exhausted. This is really for me, maybe I should do something else. There was at one point I was even thinking about midwifery, totally different. But I loved film and I wasn't going to give up. And anyway, got to set, Gravity, discovered very quickly I'm not a set girl. I don't like being cold.
What was it about set that you didn't like?
I don't like being cold.
No, I hear you. I like being able to control the temperature in my room.
Yeah, and walking onto set and only seeing two other, so Gravity was huge. They must have had about 300 plus, and only seeing maybe 2 or 3 women on set, and the only person of color on set. I don't know if don't quote me on that, but I didn't see anyone else when I went on set on the few days that I did. It kind of makes you feel like, oh damn, this is it now, I'm gonna just stop. It ain't gonna happen. If no one, there was some people who were like really nurtured me and brought me up in the industry, but then it gets to a point, it's like, well, I don't see anyone like me. I've never, until last year, I didn't even meet a Black editor, so what was the point? So I just I looked at my skill set and I thought, I want to be in a department that was kind of managerial, and assistant editing fit that build outside of being person on set. I like the fact that assistant editors run the cutting room. It can be slightly a creative role, but I knew I wanted to edit at one point, but feeling like I reached a point where I got exhausted of trying and the door just being slammed in my face. So I just instead honed in and perfected my skill as an assistant editor, and I'm really, really, really happy in that role. And unfortunately, I don't want to edit, and a lot of people think that I do, but I am so happy being an assistant editor because of the managing, and I still work very closely with the departments that I used to want to work in. Like, I talk to the ADs on this project, I talk to sound department, camera department. So I still feel like I'm sort of connected to set in a way. But then I also can do a little bit of creativity with the editors, and I get to work from home or in a room where, climate control. It's great.
It's so important that you say that, because there is this assumption that, if you're an assistant editor, you want to be an editor, but actually it's such an important skill and role of it in itself.
Yeah.
That, you're winning awards for it. So, definitely. What do you think? I mean, obviously you're still getting to be the warrior queen and control that room. So what's your sort of, obviously you've worked on loads of different productions, but what's your kind of, when you go in your role, do you have, you know, often your first assistant, you've got your second assistant, or how do you carve up what you do, or are you usually, is it usually just you?
Yeah, so the types of productions I work on are like 100 million to 200 million plus productions. So I work on really huge, quite huge studio films, and as a result, there's quite a lot of allocation of money in editorial. So I tend to have, in our department, it's usually one or two multiple editors, and then we usually would have a trainee PA, and then a second assistant editor and a first assistant editor. And that's always been my working environment since the days of Gravity. So yeah, the first assistant editor would really be like the editor's right-hand man, and that person would then feed maybe simpler tasks down to a second assistant editor. So the first is really yeah, it's the point of the first is the point, I would say the point of call, anything relating to the edit, any department that wishes to know what's going on in the edit, that you would contact the first. And that sort of role really suited me, and I really liked that. And it's very, very, I'm going to stress that it's such a different role to an editor. I kind of also hate it being called an assistant, because a lot of people assume that you're making teas or something, you know, being a personal assistant or somewhat. But I almost feel like we should be called technical editors maybe or something, because we are, yeah, our knowledge and what we have to do is very technical, where editors very creative. They focus on storytelling, and the assistant editor can enhance the edit with doing things like soundtrack laying and visual effects, temp work and things like that. But primarily we are the ones working behind the scenes, making sure that technically that the editor receives what he should be receiving on a daily basis and that sort of thing. Does that answer the question?
It does. I mean, what do you think, for someone looking to get into it, what do you think the kind of the key skills or the key personality traits or skill sets would be to do a role, to get into a role like that and succeed the way you have?
Yeah, I guess I would say the professional side of me would say great communication skills. But you know what it is? And having like technical knowledge and keeping on top of the new technology and all that kind of, but you know what? It's really down to personality. You can learn what I do quite easily because it comes with experience. I didn't go to a uni, or I didn't do like a media composer course. What I actually think a lot of my success is down to my personality and just how, you know, I'm able to interact with people. Look, sometimes on features, I work 16 hours a day, right? I need to be working with people who are cool, nice, we get along. I have to sit and have lunch with my editor. If you're not, that's going to be really uncomfortable. So I would say, you need to have great banter, great personality, great communication skills, owning the room, you know, okay, and then I guess the next sort of thing you should really be able, like I call it, you should be a non-flappy person, because you know production can call and be like, look, you need to deliver this. This needs to be happening, and you need to just like really be able to prioritize what you need to do, what tasks you need to do on a daily basis. And if you're a kind of person who's not great at managing your time, or you get a bit frazzled, and this isn't for you. Not on the productions that I work on. It's just like you make a mistake and it's like, what are you doing? It's quite like so I would say I mean, I could recommend you doing courses, media composer courses, but I didn't do that. I learned on the job. I started off as an editorial trainee and just sat behind the editor. Mark Sang was so cool. He used to let me sit in the room with him and Alfonso Cuarón, and I'll just sit there in the corner, literally sometimes not even on the sofa, on the floor, just watching what he was doing and being like, oh, that button does that, that does that. And then I'd go to his first assistant's room and be like, what are you doing? I don't understand how he got that material. What do you do before it gets there? And then the first assistant would then teach me, this is the paperwork we use. And then it's suddenly you're understanding you're understanding the role of an assistant editor. So the way that I did it was I got in as an editorial trainee, and I would recommend people doing that. But if you want to edit, do not be an assistant editor, because the roles are different. An editor is about storytelling. They are focusing on the story. An assistant editor has to support the editor in the technical side of things, and they're so completely different. I don't think.
Controversial.
Yeah, I honestly, unless it's, you know, working in the productions that I work in.
Yeah.
Now, and I'm talking about the big budget stuff. In TV, I think assistant editors can go that. I think it's good for in TV. I think you get more, from what I've spoken to some TV assistants, they say, you know, they might do assembly to support their editor. I work with Oscar winner, BAFTA winner editors. There's no way they're giving me anything to cut. Yeah. Like, but why? They're being hired for that role. You've been hired to be an assistant editor. I work with really cool, nice editors who can give me that to do, but your sole purpose is to be the assistant editor. There's no time for that usually, because it's just such a busy, high-paced production.
Yeah, there's a big conversation going on in the chat.
Oh my gosh, I hope it's
names it should be, like the technical editor and editorial supervisor, which is true. It's a role within it's his own position. But I mean, to get into that position, I know, because I know a little about you, I know that you've brought people in to that role. So obviously it's so competitive these days. Everything in the industry is. And so, like I say, I know that you bring people in. So how, especially in times of lockdown and COVID pandemics, you know, how do people get these opportunities to get in, to become an editorial trainee, to become a second assistant, first, like, where are these opportunities? Or is it just sort of hoping that you network in the right place? And what do you know, I don't expect you to have all the answers, but I'm going to throw it at you.
No, sure. It's quite sad, because I was thinking about this the other day. What will happen to the role of an editorial trainee now that we're working from home? It doesn't really exist at the moment, because particularly on this production, I'm not allowed to have it we're not allowed to be in person editorial at all, because of the high profile of the show. We can lock down or anything, you know, if anyone and I couldn't have a trainee shadowing me in my house because, you know, COVID. So honestly, I don't know if that role will exist anymore unless we eradicate COVID and we're no longer working from home. But, you know, I do think you can still reach out to people. I use Facebook. I use social media to connect with people. I connected with you through Facebook. That's how we got to know each other. And if you needed an assistant, then you can reach out to people who have contacted you. Like, I've had people reach out to me and being like, you know, don't think I'm quite a trainee, but I think I can work as a second assistant editor. What do you think? And then I might hear about a production who's looking for someone a bit more experienced than a trainee who can work independently from home. So those sort of roles are coming up and existing. And the only way you get to hear about them is through, I think, networking. There isn't a magical website. And this is one of the things I struggled with when I graduated. There isn't a website that says, we're looking for trainees on this production. It's really word of mouth.
Yeah.
I would say, do you know what, actually? I would say if you are friends with the kit hire companies, Hireworks, Salon, Pivotal, those guys there, they hear about productions before anyone else. I literally I'm sure I could call them and be like, hey, do you know what's going on in 3 months' time? They'll be like, yeah, we've got a booking for this. That's still a form of networking. That's still, do you know? Yeah. And then if I couldn't approach them, then post supervisors hear about things all the time, because they've got to inquire about rooms in Soho. They know about what's going on as well. And then obviously, if you contact a first assistant editor, they will be crewing up. They usually have control over the cutting room, and they will be crewing up for the roles. They'll be finding the trainees and second assistants and things like that. Like the production that I'm on now, we didn't start shooting until March this year, but I was on it since the summer, talking about ways that we can work remotely. You know, I'd already figured out who my hire company was going to be. Salons supply my kit, who are wonderful. who also sponsored this event. And they knew 6 months in advance because I contacted them. They know they're on the radar. They know exactly what's going on. And yeah, maybe that's a little bit of insider gold for someone listening. Maybe that's where I would start now. That I don't even know if post facilities are using runners at the moment. I assume they're not, because runners usually can go into suites and talk to editors and things like that. I don't even know if that exists, because I certainly did that at Frame Store. I used to rock up to edit suites and be like, hey, what are you doing in there? I don't think you could do that now because of COVID.
I've got to probably book it in and Zoom
Yeah.
with them. But thinking about COVID as well, there was a story. What production were you on when the lockdown first hit? Because I know you put your amazing skills to work to save your production. Tell me about that.
I don't think the post supervisor would agree with you. She was amazing. Her name's Meg Clark. I was working on The Dig, the Netflix feature, when Boris said, hey, we're locking down in 2 days. But I was already sort of like a step ahead of, having to move quickly from town to home, because John Harris, my editor, was working from home anyway. He loves working from home. He has on quite a few films that I worked with him on. He loves being at home. So I already had loads of media stored on a backup drive for him. So he was already plugged in, ready to go at home. And then I always run a backup anyway, which I think is a sensible thing as an assistant to do, because if your Nexus goes down, you're just screwed. I think it's really important that you do a daily backup, media backup. And I was ready to go. I was like, okay, cool. When are they coming to fit? When's Hyperactive coming to plug me in at home? But my house wasn't quite ready for it. So I ended up working in my kitchen for the remainder of the dig. We just did a director's cut screening. So I hadn't turned over to any department yet. And I turned over to sound, music, did all the VFX turnovers from my kitchen. And I don't think we delayed the release, but we got it out. We released it in time, I think. Maybe it was delayed by a couple of weeks or so, maybe even a couple of months, but I think we hit all the deadlines. But what was the most challenging thing about The Dig is that I and the post supervisor and editor was in London. Our director was in Vienna, sorry. Our music composer was in Australia. And it was just like, we were all literally dotted all over the world. We had musicians recording in Iceland. I mean, you couldn't be more global. And we all just used our resources, the great remote working software that was attainable at the time to work remotely. We graded with the director in one country and the DOP in another country. And I had 2 machines in my kitchen. I was like, one machine I was like exporting, another one I was ingesting, I was turning over. And then because me and the editor was working remotely, we weren't on a shared system. I had to really that's when your managerial skills and that came to play, because I had to be like, oh my gosh, has he got that media at home? And I had to send it to him in a secure method, like a Sparrow or something. And then, I had to try and track his reels for the film. I was like, how am I going to do that? Because he's working on a set there. I've got an old, outdated set. And it was, honestly, it worked really well. I think I'm just super organized, guys.
So you are got your professional hat on. Sort of
it was. You just have to being a great assistant is being almost like a step ahead. You have to preempt an issue. If I do this tomorrow, what problems might happen? Or if I know I've got to do a turnover to VFX, I'm already contacting my editor to say, hey, in a couple of days, I'm going to need your updated reel because I'm going to need to do a turnover. So it's like you almost have to work ahead.
Yeah. Does it help I mean, you said you work with the same editor quite a lot. So does it help to sort of know, do you sort of get into sync with them and you know what they're doing? Or, I mean, do you pretty much always work with the same editor, or do you get to move around and have to reform that relationship all over again?
And I find that on the big features, the editors have their go-to assistant. Yeah, they do. They tend to roll on to the next film and next film together. Like, you could just look at the credits of any, you know, high-profile editors to see that they tend to do use the same assistants. And so the editor that I'm working with now, John Harris, I've worked with on three, maybe 4 productions before that, not as his first. So I only started first for him last year. I was a second assistant before that. And I've worked with maybe 3 other editors before that. So I started off working with Mark Sanger and his first assistant editor, Tanya Clark, on Gravity. Then I moved, and then my next job was on Les Miserables, and that was with a completely different editor, Chris Dickens. But Chris Dickens had cut Slumdog Millionaire, who worked with Danny Boyle, who worked with John Harris, and then I got in and worked with John Harris on Trance, and that was my next job. And then I kind of stuck with John. I really enjoyed working with John, and his first assistant, Tamsin Jeffrey, who was amazing and love her to bits. Like, we're really good friends now. And when she heard about a film and she was going on with John, she would then take me, and then and then I really enjoyed working with Danny Boyle, and I was like, I want to stick with this team. I like Danny, I like John, and then it kind of works a bit like that in features. You do tend to roll on with your editor, and then back to what you were saying is that then you really, really get to learn about your editor's likes and dislikes, how he works. Like, I don't really need to pick up the phone to call John and say, hey, what do you need done today? Because I've worked with him before. I just know what he likes. I know how he likes his bin displayed, his scene bins displayed. I know that he's not so keen on using like generic atmoses and things. He likes spot effects. He likes, he wants his VFX temp to look like that. I'm not saying that's what he does, but you end up knowing an editor quite well, what he needs from you. And I feel like it's I say this a lot, an unspoken language between the two of you. You develop this language that you don't even need to talk. You just know what's expected. And I think you get that if you've worked with the same editor more, like, quite a few times. This industry as well, I think you learn quite quickly who you want to work with and who you perhaps don't really want to work with. I've got a little list of people that I'm not sure we would get along.
Fair enough.
And then
I won't press you on that.
yeah. But there's certain movies that come with, well, like, for example, I don't particularly think I would. No, actually, I won't say that. But there's particular movies that that you might assume might come with long hours, say 16-hour days. A heavy VFX film would probably come with a 16-hour day. Are you kind of assistant editor who wants to work 16-hour days? I don't think I am that person anymore. I'm not going to rule it out completely, but then and those big features, you tend to have a particular editor in this country cutting it, and then you just know, maybe, what's the point? Why should I reach out to you and try and find work if I don't think I'm suited on that type of production? And then you kind of just, well, like I said, I love working with Danny Boyle. I think he's a true filmmaker. I love his crazy little brain. He honestly is wonderful, and he's the nicest person ever. I want to be around nice people. Like, I'll walk on to set and he'll be like, Ruth, and I'm like, how? In front, he'll be like, hey, how are you? How's your mum? This is Danny Boyle.
That's amazing. Sounds like you're living quite the high life there, Ruth. Quite glamorous. I believe you might have had a little run in with George Clooney.
Yeah, so I need a sip of my wine.
Doing you. Wait for this one.
So what I do love about this industry is that I have so much fun, and I think it suits my personality down to T. I've been able to travel not all over the world, but I've been able to travel around, spend time abroad, work with Oscar winners, BAFTA winners, and just being like, oh my gosh, you're amazing. I had that moment with Danny Boyle. I was like, I love you. I I wrote my uni thesis about train spotting, and I got to work on train spotting too.
Living the dream.
Yeah, I was like, oh my gosh. And I did not tell him that because he would just think I'm crazy. But okay, so I worked on Monuments Men. George Clooney directed Monuments Men. So I worked on Monuments Men maybe 9 months or something when they shot it in Berlin, I believe, and then I joined for post. And that was that moment of, wow, this is quite glam. I loved it. I loved it. I was the trainee on Monuments Men, and Gravity was opening the film festival that when we were working on Monuments Men, we were like halfway through post, and George had to go back. He was living in Lake Como at the time. He had to go back to open for the opening of Gravity. Anyway, so we were like, okay, what's going to happen here? So he moved, I believe the editor moved into his house in Lake Como, could you imagine? And I was like, oh, I'm going to be left here. But I got to go too. I did. Yes, I did. I went to George Clooney's house.
Fancy. That's a lot fancier than any job I've had, I think.
So I was like, I remember getting home and being like, yeah, Mum, I need to pack my bag. I need to leave tomorrow. I'm going to Lake Como. I'm going to George Clooney's house, and left. And Mum was like, hey, what? And it wasn't until after I came back that she was like, who's George Clooney? But you know what was even more surreal? I could have handled being in his home, because don't forget, I was working with him anyway. He was the director of Monuments Men. So it was that whole starstruck thing. I was over that. But then I got to be in his house, sleep in the same house with him, wake up in the morning, have breakfast with him, and see him in these pajamas. Then, because Gravity was opening, Sandra Bullock was like, hey, I'm coming to stay too. And then I was like, wait, well, hold on a minute. I'm like waking up in the morning, bed hair, Sandra Bullock's in the kitchen and we're having coffee. And then Alfonso Cuarón and his girlfriend turned up. So I was like, hold on a minute. This is the most, it was the most surreal. I'm not, when I was there, I'm not how I am now. I was so shy and so uncomfortable. I couldn't wait to leave because it was just a bit too much.
I don't believe it. I don't believe it. I think I'm in the wrong role. I think I need to. Yeah.
And I've honestly, it's opened so many doors. I've met some amazing people. Like, I really enjoyed working with George. I hope to work with him again. And the first that I was working with on Monuments Men has gone on and worked with him again. And he's just really, really cool. And then I've worked with first assistants from LA. I've been able to go out and stay with them on holiday and stuff. And have you noticed, I love what I do.
Yeah, it's great. You're a great spokesperson for that. Brilliant. It's brilliant. But I mean, you also, handed it or slip into the segue into the next part, my next question. But loving what you do and seeing how the industry changed or not changed, that's a question for you. And then obviously you have with Francine Leach set up the Black British Post-Production Collective, which I think is so important for the industry right now. So so loving what you do and notice it. Do you think the industry's changed or needs to change, and why did you think it was important to set that up?
So I'd always been a little frustrated with the industry, being very frustrated with the industry, on working in the high budget productions. There's been multiple productions and I would be the only person of colour. And I guess it really, and I'd always been quite vocal about it, really kind of amongst people that I could trust, like work colleagues and things like that. Sometimes I'll bring it up and being like, this doesn't seem right. And why is this happening? I didn't even meet a female editor until I worked on The Crown, and that was 6 years into my career. And then I'd never met a Black editor, ever. So last year, obviously George Floyd's murder, and then the Black Lives Matter movement really struck me to look at my working environment, my workplace, and it confirmed that no one's going to address this the lack of diversity in post-production. I'm just gonna see who's out there. So I was talking to Francine. Francine's now my second assistant editor, but we met at church when she wasn't even working in film, but she had a passion for film, like editing. She would edit like little like freelance bits. But I was like, what do you do, girl? She was like, I don't work in film. I was like, why not? She was like, well, how do you get in? And I used my powers. I heard about someone needing an editorial PA on Bird Box, and she got the job. And so she left her, whatever, I can't remember what she was doing. I think she was, yeah, it wasn't related to the industry at all. And she got in. And I remember talking to her last year, being like, have you ever met anyone Black? And she was like, there's kind of a lot of like people outside of the industry doing a thing, but not in the industry, like, you know, freelancers doing like commercials and things. She was like, they're there, but they're not in the feature film world. So then I said, well, let me just contact a few people, see if I can meet any Black assistant editors. Let me just start there. And I found, as soon as I asked one, someone knew someone, and then we met up in Hampstead Heath over the last summer. It's about 6 of us. And we were just having a chat, and I was like, this is really, really cool, because now I've met you, and I was like, this is really cool. Where should we take this? And a lot of people were like, I think you should set up some sort of group, Facebook group. And then that's how it birthed. Fran and I created the Black British Post-Production Collective. We've got 100 members. I made it my goal to meet Black editors, because I hadn't met anyone. I hadn't. And then I got to meet you, I got to meet Nori Lotti, I met Sarah Bruton, like, I didn't know Tanya Redding. I was like, how have I been in the industry 11 years and never met you? Yeah. I never saw anyone like me.
I'm always shocked when people say it to me, like, I've never met a Black editor, or I've never met a female editor. And then I think, go on, stretch it, take it a bit, and you've never met a Black female, you know, and it is so strange, because I do know people, like, you know, when we talk about female editors, I know loads. But I guess there's so many things being made that you can go out through this industry and not meet anyone outside your circle or outside the productions that you're on or whatever. So I think it's so valid, because the group is so open. Your group is so open and welcoming and shares information and thoughts and jobs. And I think it's really essential. Do you, since the Black Lives Matter movement and setting that up, and the talk, you know, the Edinburgh TV Festival and all the talk of the Coalition for Change and all of it, have you noticed, I mean, it's difficult, we're in lockdown, have you noticed any difference? Do you feel that there's a movement? Do you feel that it's opening up? I mean, I personally, I'll stop rambling in a minute, but I feel that I'm often, you know, people used to say to me, oh, do you know such and such editor? And I would always say, I don't. We don't really talk. Editors don't speak to each other, let alone whether they're women, different backgrounds, whatever. We didn't. We sit in our rooms. And, you know, I may be wrong, but these sessions, events like this, the virtual glass of wine and what BFE is doing for editors now as well, where everyone gets together and I feel like I know editors now. I know, you know, everyone on this chat, I know I could probably reach out to them, and that's changed. So having like a group like Black British Post-Production Collective, and meaning those people can talk. Do you see change or feel change happening?
I think there are a lot of schemes popping up. And do you know what? Perhaps I'm being a bit pessimistic. You know, I kind of feel like I've been here before. Like a decade ago, I was on a scheme. It was to look for 10 Black Londoners to make 10 films over a course of a year. At the end of that scheme, who was held accountable? Only I and maybe one other person got employment in the industry. I am the only one in feature films from that. I've got like a friend of mine, he's a freelance video, he does like wedding videos and things like that. I'm the only one from that group. Who held, I get a little bit frustrated and a bit passionate about it, excuse me, but what happened after that? So the government or the UK lottery funded this for a year. Let's train Black people. And then what happened? None of us were employed at the end. So, and I feel like the Black Lives Matter movement, in our industry, people are talking about more schemes again. I'm like, what is the point of having a scheme if you're not hiring us? There has to be we have to be hired, and then we need to make sure that we're retained in the industry. Like you were saying, David at the Edinburgh TV Film Festival, he was talking about retention, like how many people have left the industry. He even said that 73% of BAME production talent are considering leaving the industry. He even said, like, it was, I couldn't believe it. He was saying like 2% of content in the UK is created by BAME crew. 2%. That's not a true reflection of where we live. Actually, the true reflection of where we live, crew should be 36% of BAME of crew should be BAME. Living in London. London's creating most of the content in this country. It should be 36%. That's over a third of your workforce should be BAME. It is not, because I have been on, sorry, I'm getting passionate. I have been on major film sets, 200 million budget productions. I am the only one there. So if you're talking about, do I see change coming? There's a lot of chat about it, but maybe, you know, it has opened the eyes of people in the industry. Seeing George Floyd, like, I feel like the world has come to stand against that sort of violence and police brutality. People's eyes are suddenly opening and they're thinking about their environment. You know, one thing that I would say is, if you walk into a room and everybody looks like you, there's a problem. We live in a multicultural city. We should not only have white work colleagues in any room, in any environment. Like that for me, it's just like, I can't. And I guess that's how my collective, Black British Production Collective, was birthed out over the frustration of being like, if I don't know you exist and I'm Black, then how on earth would how would the people in positions of power who are hiring would, and I'm talking about white middle class men, how would they know about you? So that's why I formed this group, so we can all be in almost like one place. And if anyone wants to say, look, we've got this quota to hire BAME, I don't even like using BAME, excuse me, I don't, but you know, then it's we're in one place, and we can, and then it like there's no excuse now. You know what I mean? Like, you can't say I don't know anyone, but I won this award, you know me now, and I know several people, so ask me. There's no, like, sorry, I don't want to.
I think it's really, I think everything you're saying is really important. I think it's also, I think your award was absolutely well deserved, and also to put you out there in the spotlight as a role model, and you know, being visible and all of that. I think it's really, really, really important. And I'm, you know, thank you for everything that you're doing. I think it's really, really important.
And honestly, I really hope that I look back at the little Ruth when she was growing up. I saw no one. I didn't know anyone working in the film industry. I didn't, like, literally. It was like I used to get, not from my family so much, but I used to get, you know, just general people that I meet. You know, you're not going to succeed in this, right? No one looks like you, hello, like, to try and protect me from the racism that we know that exists in this industry, right? Because it is just racism. That's why we're not being hired. It's not about that we're not talented and we're not crude, because like I said, there's a lot of schemes out there training us up, like, you know, we're, you know, so it's not that, you're just not hiring us. And it was like, I was hit that all the time. I don't think you're going to make it if you're not going to make it. And I really hope that this award shines light on me, and even for young people coming up, if they Google me, they see me, they're like, oh my gosh, that's a face, that's someone who looks like me. Because that's so important. You wouldn't believe how important it is. Even as a child growing up, I saw no one like me on TV. I used to think there was something wrong with me. Should I be white with blonde eyes and blonde hair and blue eyes? Like, you don't understand how detrimental it is and how damaging it is for people, for young people, not seeing someone like them on TV. And I think we have, over the last decade, 2 decades, there has been more Black talent on the screen, and we're breaking that down. So young people, children in particular, can see someone that looks like their mummy and daddy and think, you know, but the people creating the content are not a true representation of this city, of this world, and I get it, it's something that really frustrates me. Is there change coming? I hope so, because there's a lot of conversations about it now. But the only way it's going to change is if people in a position of power, so the execs, the people, the financial control that, and all those sort of people, if they start thinking about, who am I hiring? Where's this pot of money coming from? Is there a certain allocation of money to, you know, like we have it. I honestly said I can't really answer that. I mean, because even David in that interview was saying 15, 20 years ago, there was more BAME crew 15, 20 years ago, but they left the industry. Are we going to spend another 20 years talking about the same thing? Nothing has actually fundamentally happened in 20 years to make this. He was just like, literally, it was such a great speech of his at the Edinburgh TV Film Festival last year. And I was like, you know what, you're right. So it's going to take another 20 years. And then at that point, are we still at 2%? Is that, yeah? Do we just leave and forget it because we're not getting those roles? It's not to say we don't exist, like we don't exist. What was he saying about the Directors UK? What was it? I wrote it down. The Directors UK in 2016 reported, no, seriously, because I was like, you know, he said that 2% of the content was made by BAME crew, director, but on their database, they had nearly 4%. So that still means we're still not getting hired.
Yeah.
But so we're out there on a database and we're still not getting hired. So, and should Steve McQueen just be the go-to Black director that we just celebrate? No, it's just one person. Should he have to carry, you know, like, he's incredible, outstanding. I would really love to work with him. But should he be the one encouraging employment? That's not fair.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah. Well, this is why it's so important. Everything that you've done is so important. Your group, this is partly why I nominated you for the award, and knowing that you're great at what you do, as you have proved. And as Fergus said, I think you should, we will need the memoirs to come out soon, because we want to hear more of your George Clooney stories. What are you working on at the moment? Have I asked you that? What are you working on right now?
Yes, I'm working with Danny Boyle, of course, right, my favourite director, on the Sex Pistols biopic.
Ooh, wow, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's really, really great.
How far into that are you?
We started shooting in March, so we're about halfway through production. Right. Yeah.
Good. So I feel like I've learned so much from you, and I feel like I should open up if there's any questions that anyone else has got, because I haven't
been reading the chat. Shall I quickly catch up? I'm so
There's been a lot of chat about names for assistant editors, and your controversial take on the fact that everyone's been told to be an assistant editor first.
Oh, really? Hey, Una.
Has anyone got any questions for Ruth?
Oh my gosh, it's going to take me a while to read all of it, I think.
Yeah. Hi, Ruth, Alex, Pascal, Yandli, Pascal. I've got a question. Well, I've been editing for 23 years. And last year was the first time I've worked with a Black female producer director, and before that it was 8 years when I worked with my first Black male producer. So I hear everything you said on a regular basis. I don't know if you get them. I get, you know, I finish a job, I'm familiar with most of the companies, you know, Channel 4 or Channel 5 or BBC, and they'll send me a form, and it's always a tick box thing, you know, just as long as I tick that I was Black, they're happy with that. But post George Floyd, I made a panorama as part of the team, and it was with Clive Myrie, and he presented it, and I sent out an email. It's just general kind of the herograms are going around, and I said, this is the first time I've worked with a Black female producer on that production, and they were shocked. And it was obviously that they hadn't really thought, they just hadn't thought, it just wouldn't occur to anybody that that was even a thing or could be a thing or whatnot. But I went on a little bit further to say that I'm bored of getting forms to fill out and whatnot, and what we need to do is start conversation. And you can only, in my opinion, get Black editors, producers, directors, cameramen, whatnot, if you ask them, if you're serious about fixing this problem or addressing this problem, then we have to be asked how to fix that problem. We are the ones that need to be asked, but that at the moment isn't happening. And that's why I think we're not getting anywhere. And we're quite far away from getting somewhere because we're there, but we're silent. And I don't know whether that is, I'd rather not be cynical, but is that on purpose, or is it just the way that it's always been? So then therefore, that's the way that it is going to be. But what I would like to suggest is, it's brilliant what you've set up, and I only knew about it today. So I've gone on Facebook and I've requested to join the group. But I think maybe I belong to a group of editors, and what we do is we have a WhatsApp group and we share work, and that's how it works. And I think maybe it will be a good start for us. I don't know if it's happened, if we have a WhatsApp group for the Black editors. So at least we start getting to have that discussion amongst ourselves and then see where it goes and see what we can do.
I think, yeah, it definitely can. The group, my group, I do, because obviously I've set it up now, I am getting post supervisors, producers contacting me privately to say, hey, can I post this on your group? There has been a lot of, I mean, if you were to go into the group, I'll accept you after, obviously, and there is work is coming through on the group now, which is really good. So I am seeing, I am starting to see people saying, hey, I think there is an issue, you're right, you know, there is something wrong here. And I'm putting that down to the whole Black Lives Matter movement, really, because it's suddenly, like I was saying earlier, suddenly people's eyes were opening and looking around in their work environment, being like, this isn't right. Something's wrong here. I need to start addressing certain things. So people are starting, I think people are starting to wake up, say. And I have been getting a lot of posts in the group. But yeah, totally happy to form a WhatsApp group if that's easier for people. But, you know, primarily, apart from just sharing job roles, it really was just me wanting to hang out and meet people who look like me. I just wanted to start there. You know what I mean? And then also realizing, because I was in this like feature film bubble, being like, oh my gosh, people are making like really cool short films. People like I'm really into documentary filmmaking now, and it opened my world that, you know, being in features as well as sort of glamour, and I've spun it with the great stories and everything. But actually, people are making really amazing content outside of this feature film bubble, and it's like, to be honest, if they don't want us, then well, we can just make our own little indies which are impactful. Look at the Oscars like this year. Oh my gosh, would you have imagined first Muslim winning an Oscar, female Asian winning an Oscar? Like, oh my gosh, and these aren't like I wouldn't consider blockbuster hits. So I might have worked on the Les Miserables and the Maleficent too, and things like that. Are these films, are they dying out now? The Marvels and all that, do you know what I mean? I don't know if we should be chasing that dream anymore. Does that?
Ruth, I think visibility is so important as well, though, and a voice, and it's you've obviously got both. It's so important, though. Like in our organization, I think there was a perception, because it was seen like a BFE governor was an older white person, and none of the governors were excluding anybody at all, you know, all fantastic people, but it sort of evolved into that corner almost by natural selection or something or other, you know. But we've managed to sort of get away from that, and there's a diverse group, and the nice thing is that you do see, you know, we've got a red-haired Italian woman who presents the virtual glass of wine. You know, we've got Seb who's there. We've got Alex down there. You know, we just got a good, yeah, it's a proper visibility. I think it's important, because there's there's something about inclusivity that just says we're open, you know, and actually it's not going to be that hard to fight because you've got a good bit of personality to you and people will listen, you know, people will give you a go. But it's for the quiet ones, actually, because I don't think anything would have stopped you. It's for the quieter ones that just we need to let them know that, you know, we're open. You can join us. You know, it's here for you. And you know, this is what an editor looks like. This is what a successful assistant editor looks like. This is what a BFE governor looks like. This is what an award winner looks like. And I really.
It totally is visibility because, you know, you would never imagine how intimidating it is to walk into a room and not see anybody like you. So immediately I'm working class, I don't sound like you, I'm from South London, like, and then of course I'm a person of colour as well. So it was really intimidating, and it's an extra layer of, you know, of a barrier that I had to go through to work. Like a majority of people who work in the industry would never have to worry about the way that they look and they sound. But then I had that extra, it's like mental trauma having to deal with a little bit. So we do need visibility because people like me, younger people like me, young people wanting to break into industry, they need to see people like them. That is key. Successful people to then feel like I can make it, because my community, my Black community, I wouldn't say my friends so much, not really my family, but people used to comment, even at uni, Black friends that I used to meet at uni would be like, why are you even thinking about film? They don't accept us, they don't want us here, don't do it. And that's quite a common thing for people to say.
It's horrible thing.
Really horrible.
Yeah.
And like you said, my personality, was like, that was more of a drive for me to get in.
Ruth, can I ask you something? When I started in telly, and I graduated from Ravensbourne, and I got my first job at ITV, and I knew that if I messed up, that no one that looked like me would be in that position after me. And I'm older now, so I really don't care. But have you ever felt that? And do you think that kind of sentiment has changed, or are we still in the same place?
Yep. You should check out my interview with Oral Nori Otti, and he is a Black British Jamaican editor, and he said exactly what you were saying. He felt as though he had to carry the flag, not mess up, because he was the only Black guy, like, you know, on set, in post-production, cutting, and he felt an immense amount of pressure. And did I feel that? No, I just didn't care, because I had such a love for film anyway. I felt like I was always going to get it. Like, my mum brought me up to be like, you get in that room, you do what you do, you know. But yeah, I've spoken to Black filmmakers who do feel that way, and I guess maybe because I've been in it for like 11 years, maybe maybe I did as a trainee, but then I wasn't making any decisions then. So you don't want to mess up anyway, because you feel quite privileged to have got the role on Gravity, for example. So I didn't really want to mess up then anyway. But now I'm kind of like a first assistant editor, and I've kind of paid my dues. Like, I've proven that I can do it, you know, because I'm first in on big features and things like that now. So then I don't really give a damn. You know, if I make that's probably wrong. I shouldn't really say that. It's really flippant. But I mean, like, I've surrounded myself with people who have nurtured me, and I feel as though have loved me. There's first assistant editors who really pushed me and taught me how to be a really great assistant. I've worked with editors like Una, love you.
She's turned me down so many times. I've asked her for every film.
who was like, come into my room and see what I'm doing. Let me teach you what I do. I've purposely surrounded myself with editors, producers, post supervisors who are on my wavelength, who aren't going to judge me, who I assume aren't racist, and I feel safe in that working environment. And so I guess I haven't felt that as much because I've just been really lucky and fortunate that the team of people I've worked with who have like pushed me and really nurtured me and taken time to teach me. And yeah, it's about your environment and who's in the room with you, I guess.
So
and yeah, sorry, I don't know where I'm going with it. I hope I've answered that. I think.
Ruth, I was wondering, what can BFE do? What would you like them to do for assistant editing? Because essentially we've kind of picked you, and it was a bit mean, to represent assistant editing, and it's a bit like Miss World doing the world tour. Part of your world tour is to represent assistant editing to everyone and to be a fantastic example of it, but not the rest of Miss World, of course. What can BFE do for assistant editing, for people of color, for women, for any ideas? What can we do?
Oh my gosh, that's quite heavy loaded. Seb, can you help me?
That's all on you, babe.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, I'll just to start you off. I think the fact that the way that that BFE has diversified over the last year plus, I think has been a conscious effort, and you know, I recognise that and appreciate it. And I think that to keep making that conscious effort and to show people that they're welcome and that they're included will hopefully make a difference. If enough people, if the message is spreading and everyone is feeling it and sharing it, that can't be a bad thing. And it will bring more people to us. Like I said, our chats and the fact that we're all more open and we all speak to each other in these kind of sessions, you know, we're not those sort of, I don't know, awkward people in dark rooms anymore. We go out and we chat to each other, and I think that will encourage more people with different personalities and backgrounds and people like Ruth to come to our industry and be welcomed in and be able to be their wonderful, passionate, loud selves about their roles and hopefully find out more. I mean, that started you off, Ruth. What you got?
I think, yeah, you knocked the nail on the head, I guess. You know, what can the BFE do? I think you are moving in the right direction. Yeah, like exactly. I could just repeat what you were saying, Zeb, to be honest. I agree with everything you were saying. But I think outside of the BFE and just those, I don't know if we've got like post supervisors here, producers and editors here in the mix. One thing that I would just say is just spend a day maybe just looking around. If you're on set, walk on set and open your eyes and see who you've hired. Is it a true representation of the city we live in? 36% of crew should be BAME. If it isn't, obviously that's extreme, but just have a moment and just think about it. Then think about if a role as a trainee comes up, or first assistant or second assistant, obviously there's positive discrimination, I understand that, but just have a think about, can I, you know, increase my network and join groups that are built up to support and network with Black or Asian groups, or even groups with disability. There's so many Facebook groups. There's groups that focus on disability, crew who are disabled, who are, you know what I mean? There's so many, like, I'm talking about representation over the board as well. Do you know what I mean? There's so many minorities that aren't being represented, you know, and I think you just need to have a moment and just look around. And if you see that your department is not reflecting the city that we live in, the world in fact, then be ballsy and say, hey, do we have a pot of money to reach out to Screen Skills who might have a traineeship that's being, you know, supporting BAME crew? Can we hire someone? You know, like the BFI just launched their Step Up scheme. It's amazing. Have you spent time to Google and think about what schemes there are out there. What is BFI doing? Have you even thought about who have they just recently employed? Their inclusion and diversity officer, she's Black. She's doing great things. She's, you know, like, have you thought about even doing things like that? Like, it astounds me that I'm able to know about these schemes and what people and organizations are doing, but then I get really blank faces from post supervisors and producers who like, really? This is the industry that we work in. If you know, you should know about what's going on. I don't have the answers. I didn't really want it to turn into this whole like a racial debate or anything like that, because I can get really passionate about it, and you know, it's quite upsetting to always feel like I have to talk about it, and it's unpleasant. It's not very nice. It's time to just have a think about your environment. If it's all white and male, you need to change it.
I think it's a creative industry. We're creative people. Let's hire creatively as well. Just not do the same, not go for the obvious, same as before. It's not.
But you know, Ruth, you said something really brilliant there, just about, say, for the future, young kids coming up through the ranks. And I don't know whether BFE would consider whether we, you know, somehow get a pot together to get. Because one thing I can see is if I was trying to get into the film industry nowadays, I couldn't get in because I wouldn't be able to afford the fees. I was really lucky that I went to the National Film and Television School in the 90s when it was free. So that's a huge difference. So I don't know, would BFE be able to do something that we could get like a fund that could actually help young people get training or get access? Because I think the biggest difference is to allow people to learn or to get access or to get some training, even if it's like a short course and we get, you know, several people in. I've done a few, you know, BAFTA talks or TS talks, and without doubt, for years now, when I look at the audience, even the film school audiences, there is a huge underwhelming representation of Black students in those audiences, and it is shocking because it doesn't represent our community. And can I say, on behalf of Ruth, because you've been so modest saying it's your personality, Ruth is brilliant. So whenever I had the pleasure of working with her, her sound design levels, her editorial skill and her taste and judgment is beyond par. And I'm now campaigning that she actually directs her own documentary about her family. So I'm going to start that with BFE. Forget the memoir, do the film first. But you are an excellent filmmaker. And if you did ever want to edit, I know you said your heart is in assisting, but you are a storyteller. You're a natural storyteller, and your gift for the way you use sound design and how cinematic you approach every scene, it's just beyond par. So you're brilliant.
Oh, thank you.
And she has actually officially turned me down for every job. So when you said you have a list of people you don't work with, I was a little bit worried I was going to go into
You know, right? Every time you email me, I'm working. I'm sorry.
I know.
We'll work together again.
I hope so. I'll assist you.
Oh my
I
God.
do think visibility, I do think you're all right about that. And
I don't know if it's worth answering that just so it's not left hanging, but behind the scenes, there are kind of quietly student members that are sponsored by BFE. There's talk about having full members that can sponsor other students. But I think it's a great idea, Una, to maybe to put something in place. Be nice to, if you're interested in doing it, you know, to talk to the board about it, because because even if it's the visibility of doing something like that and the message it sends out that could be positive, it's hard to know who you'd identify and what the barrier would be and all of that. I don't really know well enough, but you're saying effectively there's just not enough representation. So
Ruth, would you be willing to be a mentor? That's Stefania, by the way. And by the way, I work at LSBU, and it was the one that was like, oh, I want to listen to her. So, and you probably were taught by one of my colleagues if you graduated from there.
Okay.
Who was your?
Bill O'Shea. He was
Bill O'Shea. No, maybe he's left by now.
Yeah. He was doing the film module when I was. Would that have been 2009? when I was at LS. I do mentor. I do have mentees. It's not with a particular organization. I've kind of just created my own mentoring scheme.
Because we have a mentoring scheme at BFE, which we're about to start again in July. So I'm about to send a call out to get more names for mentors. So if you feel like you can join us doing that, that would be great. Yeah. And whenever you like, I would love to have you at LSBU to give a talk. Because you're an alumni, but also we've had Simon Smith, who was an alumnus of the LSBU, but also because we have, yes, he did, yeah. So because we have a very diverse community of students, and I always feel like, when I'm showing them stuff, it's always, I try to diversify as much as possible, but it would be nice to see a face that can say, yeah, I can do it, I think it would be really important.
When it comes to visibility, I'm involved in doing the social media side of BFE. So if anyone has got a show reel or a website or just a few sentences on what they've done so far, we'd love to retweet it and put it on Facebook, on Instagram, LinkedIn. So anyone here, especially assistant editors, mention us on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn, whichever one's your favorite, and then we'll amplify you, because we want to see you. We want to get you visible. With our limited following, it's the start. You never know who might see it.
Yeah, I can see Amber's here. Amber, that goes out to you. Amber Saunders, she's an amazing editor. Can I just say, she's not on, you can't see her, but she's there.
Yeah, we can see her name.
Yeah, Amber, I hope you're listening. You should definitely do that. She cut recently a great collection of shorts called Breathe that We Are Parable screened last week, and it was black film during lockdown, black writers, black director. It was amazing. And Amber, black female editor, cut it, and it was great. I really enjoyed watching it and getting involved with that. So we are like I said, we are out there, and we are doing amazing. Like, if you can check it out, I don't know if it's still available online. It's called Breathe with We Are Parable. It's really, really great. So a little shout out to the team who made that. Yeah, thanks so much. That's really encouraging. I like that I feel supported in this, and I feel like I'm not uncomfortable to talk about racial inequality in the film industry, and it's actually really, really encouraging to feel really supported, and that people are really trying to make a change. Yeah, thanks guys.
And tell us about the memoir.
Well, I got to do. Una and I was talking for about 2 hours. I need to sort my family out. My family are really, really quite interesting.
I will edit free of charge if you shoot that documentary. We all will want to be involved in this documentary when you hear her family.
My grandmother doesn't.
Grandmother, you have to film your granny.
She doesn't. I try.
She said no.
No, she said no. But my mum is writing her memoirs, and she's got a really amazing story about how she came here. My mum is so sidetrack. My mum's the same age as the NHS. She came here, and she's Windrush generation, came here for the call of nurses and worked as a nurse, and she worked as a nurse for 47 years. And within all of that, coming over from Jamaica, I tell you, that's a film in itself. on the boat. Like, honestly.
She came to London, straight away to London.
Yeah, she made her way over to London. Yeah, I met my dad here. He's Guyanese. My mom's Jamaican.
Wow.
Yeah.
Tell your grandmother, everything you film, you won't do anything with without her permission.
She doesn't want
film in her house. She won't even let you film in her house. No.
I tried. She's 94 years old. She's not having it.
She's not having it, Dad.
No, she's not having it. She won't let me. Like, yeah, I tried. My mom was saying that she will, but it's just not.
Wait, could you do even audio cassettes just so you get her voice captured if she doesn't, just to ease her in gently?
She's not having it. You know what? I think there's a lot of trauma there, come in here in the, what year would she have come here? In the 60s. She's 94 now. It was really bad. It was really
bad.
bad.
Yeah, it was very
and
bad.
I can understand why she doesn't want to dredge it. I mean, I know all her stories.
Yeah.
I know all of my, like, I could tell it, but it's not going to be the same. But
It was I was just saying to Ruth, I was sorry, my grandmother was the same, and she died at 99, and she would not let us film. And her uncle was one of the leaders of 1916 in Irish history who was executed. And I was desperately trying to get her to tell me, and she also, it was too painful. She didn't do it. But it is my regret to be, say, a filmmaker doing documentaries and have a story that I missed. Even the house, like your grandmother's house, it's going to look perfect.
yeah, my grandmother's house hasn't been decorated since the 60s.
Oh, well, at least we have you and your mom. Get your mom on camera quick.
Yeah, oh, my mom would love it. If you think I've got character, my gosh, my mom needs her own TV show. So embarrassing.
I managed to get my grandma on camera, a bit hidden, like on a GoPro. She wouldn't understand it was a camera, really, I think. But yeah, so she told me all the stories about the war and the partisans in Italy. So
Oh my gosh.
that was good.
That's good.
Yeah, I'm trying. She's just not having
With
it.
the phone, they wouldn't know necessarily. It's a camera in there.
Trick her. She doesn't even, I kind of approached the subject. And then I was like, maybe I could just record it on my phone.
Yeah.
And then she really, I was like, so remember that time you were telling me about that, the segregated bus in London? There were buses.
Yeah.
No.
Well, you've planted the seed. She might come around because she has a testimony. She bore witness to a huge change in Great Britain, which has already changed so much, but your granny and your mom saw it firsthand and experienced all that racism firsthand. So, at the time, I was saying to Ruth, my uncle, when he first moved over to England as well, it was, no blacks, no Irish, no dogs. It was on every door of any restaurant. It was just a horrific time that your grandmother and mother lived through.
Yeah.
And they raised you with confidence, so they've done a really good job.
Well, and it's astounding because it's my mother's generation. That's just one above me. It's like, and she went through that, and oh gosh, we can spend hours talking about it. Has there been change? Of course, there's change. Like, I think my family never imagined that I would accomplish what I have at all. And so I'm really, I hope I've made them proud.
You have.
Yeah, definitely. Just, at one point we were homeless. Like, I've had quite a traumatic childhood. Having parents from the West Indies and then being homeless and then being on a council estate but I put it down to this. Honestly, I had such an amazing head teacher at my primary school, and her ethos was all about like raising up these children from this deprived area, essentially. And I think my secondary school definitely failed me, but that's a whole other story there. But then going to LSBU and meeting an amazing tutor there who was like, "You're gifted. Yeah, let me see what's going on here." And it just takes one or two people to really nurture you and just be your cheerleader. And there needs to be more people like that, I think, for people from the BAME community kind of thing. And mentoring would do that if you have a mentor who supports you. And I didn't have that when I broke into the industry, but I purposely surrounded myself with people that I get along with, who weren't intimidated with me being who was like, you could just tell, isn't it? If someone's a bit uncomfortable you being there, kind of think, okay, I'm just going to leave now. I'm not going to approach that production. Why are they uncomfortable? Is it because I don't sound like you? I don't look like you? You kind of know. I don't know.
I think there's a question in the chat.
Okay. I need to read these. Sorry.
There's been quite a few comments.
Cameron, did you want to ask a question?
Yeah, sorry. I just wanted to ask a question. Ruth, first I wanted to say it's been really nice listening to you. I haven't actually been to one of these yet. I'm an LSBU student currently.
Oh, cool.
Someone a Stefania student. you were speaking about sort of like black role models and stuff when you were younger. My best friend for 18 years, I'm only 22, is black, and I've watched him go through all the struggles, and he's not had the same opportunities that someone in sort of my colour of skin would have. And like, he's not creative, he's going into sort of the lawyer industry and politics and stuff. And it's a similar sort of thing. Obviously, it's hard to get in. So I just thought I'd say what you're doing is brilliant, and what you represent is amazing for everyone that has a background similar to you and doesn't think they belong in a certain industry. I think that's brilliant. But I sort of wanted to ask you a question. If you were, say, sort of like 18, 19 in 2021, which I'm sure you're not far off that age now, what would your sort of plan of action be to sort of like attack the industry and get into it? Like, what would your first sort of steps be to sort of go into it?
I guess I would just be networking and trying to get to know people. In like, firstly, I think it's important that you know which department you wish to work in. Like, I think I spent a bit too long really figuring out what I wanted to do, and that might have wasted a little bit of time for me. So think about what you want to do. Do you want to direct? Do you want to edit? Do you want to be assistant editor? It's completely different there. Do you want to be a sound mixer, production sound mixer? Do you want to be in post sound? That sort of thing. And then once you find out which role you want to work on, then you need to be trying to reach out. You could use social media. It's so much more accepted now than it was 10 years ago to reach out to people who work in those roles. And you would be surprised, people would reply. I mean, you know, just keep at it, keep contacting and being like, can I come in, work experience? I'll work, if you can, work for free, maybe a week. I just want to shadow, I want to know what you're doing. And whilst you're there, just be the best person that you are, because these people know about productions crewing up. They hear about it. I hear about films happening all the time. Not so much like entry-level roles at the moment because of COVID, but I would say just reach out to those people and just keep at it, keep asking. Then, you know, Screen Skills is doing amazing entry-level kind of schemes as well. If you go on to like websites like BFI website, you would hear about things that they're doing. There's a lot more, I think, there's a lot more entry-level trainee kind of traineeship type schemes around now. Maybe even jump on that, because I did one 10, 12 years ago. And you might think, oh, a whole year doing this, it's going to be a waste of time. But one afternoon in that entire year, I was in a room with someone who worked at HR at Framestore, and I got that's how I got in at Framestore. It was just one meeting. And you know what I did? I researched who was attending. I got a list. It was at Pinewood Studios, and I got a list. I was like, who's going to be attending here? Have you got like a registry? And I researched who was there, and I thought, oh, Framestore, wow, okay, they're the visual effects company that did all the films that I was watching at the time, Narnia, Avatar, all of that. And I thought, well, that might be an opportunity for me. I say just get in, because you'll meet someone who you end up meeting someone. It will just, there's no, I don't even think there's a real route in, to be honest, because I took that role as a runner, not even wanting to work in visual effects. I needed to get in so I could talk to people who were making film face to face. I wanted to meet people. It was hard. I'm not gonna, it was really hard. It was
essentially be confident in your networking and chatting to people and just being talkative and a nice person and putting yourself out there is essentially obviously what you're saying. I know that question is probably boring for a lot of people here because you're all really experienced, but I know a lot of like LSBU students watch this, and people who are inexperienced like me would want to watch it as well and just sort of want to know from someone in the industry like what it takes and what your route would be and how you'd attack it. So yeah, thanks for answering.
Yeah, sure.
Can I give a little bit of advice about networking, but it's just my advice. Know enough about the people in the room and what matters to them so that when you have conversations with them, you have short conversations with 4 or 5 different people quite quickly. but you know enough that you're already one of them. But then what happens is you introduce one of them to one of the other people that they don't know, and by connecting those two people, you're proving you're, quote, one of us, because you know enough about their concerns. So instead of being a wannabe, you're one of us. And they both look at you and say, yeah, you're a peer of me because you knew I needed to talk to that person. And that was a really good conversation I'm now having. It was because of her over there who actually made that connection, because she was one of us. So that's my tip.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah, that's also,
Thank you very much.
I agree. Yeah, it's a good idea. But also, I think what Ruth said, researching the area that you want to be working in, and finding out who the people are and who matters and what they're doing, and I think that's very important. Just familiarize yourself with everything.
I found that the best connections I've had in like random networking places is through talking something that isn't the film industry. Like, I couldn't believe how I at the London Film Festival and a networking event, I got to speak to at least 3 people because of the t-shirt I was wearing, because it was a band, and at least 2 or 3 people came, oh, that band, how do you know that band? And we started talking, and you connect to something that isn't work, and that makes you more memorable. That makes sense. So something that isn't actually working, and it's quite refreshing when you're in a networking event and everybody's like, so what are you working on, what have you been doing, what's your line, or whatever, and then suddenly you get to talk about music, which we editor are pretty, good at. It's quite nice, and they'll remember you more. So something that isn't that, yeah, I found that really nice. And you become friends before you become colleagues, which always helps.
Yeah.
Joanna has a question.
But could I just add to that real quick? Since I'm kind of new too, but as far as like networking, like I went through the ACE internship program, not necessarily as the intern, but when you apply, you get to go to a series of events, and you're kind of in this pod of same people that all applied. And one of the things they pushed is that you're all coming up together, so work together and help each other out. So not, as you're networking, find people that are your peers, and just, keep in contact with those people, and as long as they know what you're doing, what you want to do, they may come across things that they might not be able to do, and then they can pass it on to you or whatever, stuff like that. So that's just an additional tip as far as like, work with your peers as you grow together.
Yeah, I that is really true what you were saying, Eric, because it just came to mind about, it takes me back to what I was saying about, I don't truly believe to become an editor, you should take the route as being an assistant editor. That's just me. I don't think being an assistant editor teaches you how to edit. The technical aspect of like working within Media Composer, perhaps, but editors, storytelling, assistant editor isn't. Like I think I'm good at storytelling, but the roles are different. So what I would even say and recommend, because I've seen a lot of like people breaking into the industry by doing this, is if you want to edit make friends with an up-and-coming director. Start cutting his shorts, because if he's great or she's great, she might get a feature, a low-budget feature. She's going to recommend you, because I've seen that kind of collaboration happening. Like, oh my gosh, this is really embarrassing. Shola. Oh my gosh, I've forgotten his name. Sorry. There was he was the director of The Last Tree. He worked with an editor. The Last Tree is on Netflix. It's a really great feature, actually. He was. Oh, actually, do you know what? I can't remember the conversation. Let me know. Anyway, he was an up-and-coming director who partnered with an up-and-coming editor, and then when he got his feature, which was funded by the BFI, he brought on his editor who was doing a lot of his low budget stuff. And now that editor is like cutting stuff from Kevin MacDonald. And it was just like, that having that working, that relationship there, they were both sort of like coming up the ranks together, and then they partnered up, because you can even look across like features. John Harris, editor, cuts Danny Boyle's features. Tom Hooper, director, Melanie Oliver cuts his features. They go on to they tend to go together and go on to, the director would get something and that editor would be employed. Like, people can guess what I'm working on next. If Danny Boyle announces something, usually John Harris is the editor, and then I'm usually hired onto that. I know that sounds really awful, but you can kind of see the pattern. So I would say, if you want to cut, maybe partner up with a director and see where you go, where it takes you. That could be a good idea. I'm just looking at the trend and what sort of seems to happen.
Good tips.
I might be totally wrong as well. I don't know. I didn't do that. I just made Alfonso Cuarón loads of green tea.